Welcome to Behind the Backline, the podcast where we chat with merchants, brands, and industry professionals in the musical instrument, pro audio, and event technology space about their products, services, industry trends, stories, and more. Join us now as we dig into the stories behind our favorite backline gear.
Welcome to Behind the Backline. I'm Matt Jacoby, founder of Octave Media, an inbound marketing agency focused on helping music merchants develop an automated solution to increase website sales. Today, I am speaking with Sam Welch of Welch Tuning Systems. Thanks for joining me today, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. Happy to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to start with having you tell us a little bit about who you are and what Welch Tuning does.
So I am the founder and CEO. Before I started this company, I worked full-time as a blacksmith and been playing drums most of my life. The company, basically I had this idea and of a simpler way to tune drums, and been working on it for the last couple of years. And so we basically created this system that replaces tension rods and brings it down to a single point of adjustment to tune the whole drum. And that's how we're coming to market, is just with this tuning system. And I'm sure that it's going to open the doors for more products in the future as well.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I saw this when we came up to your booth at NAMM, we were just like, seriously, this would be phenomenal. I am sick of carrying around a whole bag full of tuning keys. You manage to keep my drums sounding good based on, their travel, based on their environment they're in, the moisture, everything changes so rapidly that this was just like, oh my God, one single key. This is great.
Yeah. And, we've all been there losing our drum keys, and there are so many factors, and really we just think it's, tuning drums is way harder than it really needs to be. So we sought out to solve that problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So like in grade school and everything, you just getting started on the drums. The tuning is kind of part of the curriculum, and it's not like you're inducted into that by getting your first golden drum key and say, don't lose this now. This is how you'll get through life, is by having this drum key. But I've gotten a little collection of them, and some of them are functional, and some of them are almost like jewelry. I have one that's, very pretty and has it can go around my neck. I mean, it doubles as a necklace, but they're very easy to lose. But having that built right into the kit and having complete control without tension rods just sounds like an absolute godsend for a lot of drummers.
Yeah, well, I know I've done it, that's what it's done for myself. That's where this whole thing has gone, as I kind of solved the problem for myself, because I was, I was a working drummer, kind of a semi-professional drummer, if you will, because I was playing bars and a lot of small clubs, a lot of restaurants. I live in Denver, so there's, obviously a huge fluctuation in climate here. It'll be 70 degrees one day and 10 degrees the next day. So, I'd play gigs all over the state, and, a lot of times I just didn't have the time to properly tune them, and I would throw some gaff tape on them or some bunch of moon gels, to try to hide it, because I couldn't get them to sound quite right before a gig, or I'd spend a bunch of time tuning them at home, show up to the gig, and they sound completely different, because, we all know that drums sound different in each room.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something that I was constantly fighting. And so I solved that problem for myself. And now I'm just hoping that, we can get this out there to everybody and do the same thing that it's done for me, and just allow you to, not have that one drum that's always sounding bad, or that you have to really muffle it out because for whatever reason it has some weird sound to it. Now your whole kit can sound the way you want it to every time, and you don't have to spend hours making it happen.
Yeah.
You can tune between songs if you want to. It's pretty cool.
So can you explain a little bit about how it works? We kind of saw how the cabling system is set up. If you see a picture of it, and I'll share a picture in the show notes with this, and of course link to your website, but just kind of for people listening, just kind of what it looks like, or how it works.
Yeah, definitely. So, we all know for a single drum, you can have up to 20 points of adjustment. You have all those tension rods. And essentially what we did is we took the tension rods out, we got rid of all of the casings on the drum shell. So it's actually pretty much a floating system because you don't have all this hardware on the shell anymore. And we're using standard hoops. So basically, the holes in the hoop where your tension rods would go through, we have created a pulley assembly that attaches to that rim. And so you have all these pulley assemblies around the drum, just like you would your tension rods, but they're attached to the hoop, not to the shell. And then we used a upright bass worm gear system, a tuning machine from an upright bass, and we created a special adaptive bracket for that, and a custom winding post. We definitely had to do some engineering to make this happen. But yeah, essentially, it tunes just like a bass guitar. The cable just runs from hoop to hoop, so you're tensioning both hoops at the same time. So you're getting even head tension, or identical tension on the top and the bottom. And then it's going right to the worm gear. So just, with a couple of turns, you can change the whole sound of the drum. It makes it really easy to find the sweet spot. It's like, I feel like as drummers, we have two big things that are hard to achieve. The first one is getting even tension at all of those tension rods. And with a pulley system, its natural tendency is just to equalize pressure across that whole system. So you get the equal pressure around the whole thing, top and bottom. For me, the bottom heads, I would only touch them if something sounded seriously wrong. It was kind of a set it and forget it type of thing. And then when I was tuning, I would just mess with the top ones. But now you're actually tuning the whole drum at the same time. And then the other thing is finding that sweet spot where the drum is really resonating clearly. You don't have any weird sounds coming out of it. And with this system, because everything's working as a whole now, you don't have to tune the head separately. And a lot of times when you tune them separately, if they get a little too off from each other, you'll get all kinds of weird sounds out of it. And I think we've all experienced that. But now it's just acting as one unit, one drum, one unit. You can hear the whole thing come up into tune as a whole. And it really makes it a lot easier to get your drum sounding just the way you want. And like I mentioned before, you can tune it to different keys now. I was actually playing around with my band the other night and messing around with that and tuning to a triad that they were playing in. And it got me very excited. It's just the possibilities of this, because it's so quick. I think it really opens up kind of a new playability to the drums as well. So again, it's just a very simple system. One adjustment tunes both heads at the same time. And I definitely encourage you to check out the website. Trying to give you as much of a visual as possible, but if it's not quite making sense, definitely go to our website, see the pictures, and I think it'll just click as soon as you see it.
Well, as a fellow drummer, for all those drummers that are listening, I will attest and give my endorsement. It will make your life a whole hell of a lot easier. It's ironic that you didn't tell me before that the mechanism was actually a bass tuning peg. That goes right along with my whole the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, it's almost like, the guitar players either have a rack of guitars that are all tuned already for different songs, or they're tuning on stage between songs while the vocalist is creating a story out of thin air. And this almost is like giving the drummers that same ability. Like, you won't just sit there now and wait for everybody to tune and talk. We can tune with them, and we can actually have something to do now.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, how many times have we all sat there just kind of twiddling our thumbs? I've seen some memes online where the drummer's like knitting a sweater while the rest of the and yeah, we've all been there, and you can still do that now. If you want to just set them and forget them for the whole gig, that's fine. You'll have great sounding drums regardless. But if you want to take it that step further, if you're playing a really, say, obscure song or something, and you want to tune your drums to a certain triad within that within that scale, and it's really pretty neat. And I'm really curious to get this in the hands of drummers better than myself to see what they can really do with it, and to really hone in on that ability to tune so quickly. And that's actually something we noticed at NAMM. The beginner drummers were just like, wow, this is so much easier. And the pro drummers, and we had a lot of pros come by our booth, and which was really cool to see how excited they were about it, because they could actually tune while they were playing, which is pretty cool too. They were holding the beat down and then changing the tone of their drums within that beat, and it just added this whole nother level that you just can't do on the standard tuning system.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you had mentioned to me one of the pros that had stopped by. Is it worth sharing that one?
Sure. We had a lot of big names stop by, but yeah, definitely the one that put on the biggest show was Jonathan Moffat. He was Michael Jackson's drummer for 30 years. They call him Sugarfoot. I mean, we can all hope to be as good of a drummer as that, to have a name like Sugarfoot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But yeah, I played with Michael Jackson for 30 years. Elton John, Madonna. I mean, it really doesn't get much bigger than that. And it was so exciting to have him stop by the booth. Not only is he just a really nice guy and a killer drummer, but he checked out our product, and then he sat down at the kit and he just put on a show. And that was probably the highlight of the show for me. That was just so cool.
Yeah, that is amazing to just have that kind of response, that kind of visitor this early in the game.
Definitely. Well, and until NAMM, our website went public the beginning of the year, but NAMM was really our first, let's show this thing to the world. Let's see what people think of it. Now, when I had this idea, of course, I thought it was a good idea. And, I built it, and I recognized the immediate benefits myself. But, a lot of times product developers or inventors can fall in love with their idea, but nobody else thinks it's that cool.
Yeah.
So bringing it to NAMM and getting that kind of response, because I really did, this is something that I just really wanted to share with my fellow drummers, because of the benefits it provided me, and to get that reception, to see the jaw drop reaction of everyone when they came by the booth, to see them start talking about all the different cool things they could do with it, or how much it's going to make their life easier, really just validated the whole idea. And it was incredible. I don't think we could have asked for a better show and better motivation to really get this, push this thing to market and get it out there as soon as we can.
Yeah, definitely. And the whole, I think I might have mentioned this to you earlier about, up until now, it always felt like the only way you can make a drum sound really good is if you handed over the controls to the sound guy. Like, unless they're mic'd, you could not get them to do anything correctly. I swear I've never in 20 years been able to find any sweet spot on those things. And it only comes when the sound guy has got me wired up for a live show. It's like,
yeah.
So it's kind of demotivating. Like, am I doing something wrong because I can't get this thing to sound good without a mic?
Right. I know. I mean, I've thought the same thing myself. And I know there's people out there that are just like total pros at tuning, and the drum techs, right?
Yeah.
If only we could have a drum tech coming to each one of our gigs and spending, the hour it takes to properly tune a drum set to the room. But I know that most of us don't fall into that category. And yeah, it's, same kind of thing. The sound guy can always make it sound good out there. But I know myself, I've played gigs where there's just one drum that I couldn't even get it to sound good enough at the kit. And so I'd avoid that drum the whole gig. It would have this weird ringing Doppler sound, and this weird vibration, or something was wrong with it. And that's not right. We practice our craft, and we put a lot of money into the drums that we buy, and to have such a hurdle into just making them sound good. I think about, we look at a guitar, they've got 5 strings, they've got 1 knob per string. And then when we got our drum set, and I generally play on a 5-piece drum set. And I think about it, and it's like, just imagine if a guitar player had 20 points of adjustment or 20 knobs per string. It would seem absolutely ridiculous. It's like, I feel like drums are one of the only instruments that takes as much skill to tune them as it does to play them. And I never fully developed that skill myself. The fact of the matter is, I've been playing a long time. For the most part, I could get my drums sounding pretty good, but they were never consistently sounding exactly the way I wanted them. And then when it comes to the miking too, while the sound guys can certainly perform their magic on the sound, that's a pain for them too. And so one of the tests that we did prior to NAMM is, for one, we tried this system in different rooms to see how easily it could tune to the rooms and such, and then we mic'd them up as well. I was very curious to see the reaction from a sound engineer's point of view, because they hear different things. They're throwing a mic right on that drum, and they might hear something different than what I'm hearing sitting behind the kit. And I was very happy to find out that these were some of the easiest drums they've ever mic'd, because they provide such a clean and clear sound. Again, those heads aren't fighting each other at all. The top head, the bottom head, and the shell are all working as one. So they really put off this really just clean and clear sound. And that does translate through the microphones. Actually, if you look at our videos online, we've bootstrapped this whole thing. So I had some friends that are professional sound engineers, and they did the miking and recording for me. But then it was kind of up to me for any post-production. Well, I don't have, the audio tools to, adjust the levels and stuff. So all those videos you see online, those are just a raw recording. That's just right from the soundboard. It just sounds great without any of that extra compression or wizardry that they do, to make the drums sound good. And so that's part of why I wanted to, is, the goal with this is to provide drummers with, just a very well working product. So I didn't want to spend the time after those videos to make them sound differently. I wanted to show you exactly how those drums sound. So, hopefully we'll be saving not only drummers time, but sound engineers as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, technically, if you think about it, before this, there was really no way besides the soundboard to get a drum to have a perfect sounding sound that like mimicked having two drum heads that would work together. I mean, if you imagine doing that manually, like, okay, I think my bottom head is exactly the same tension as my top head. That pretty much is impossible.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of great products out there to try to help with that. Trust me, I own all of them. I've got the tune bot, I've got the, what do you call it, the drum dial. There you go. And and those are great tools, but I found that I never brought them to gigs, for one, because I really didn't have the time to sit there with each drum. It's like generally I'd have maybe 45 minutes to set up, something like that. And then the sound guy is miking my kit before I even have my cymbals out of the bag.
Oh God, they do that to everybody. I think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And so again, there's great tools out there to help with that, but just in a practical scenario, I feel like it is close to impossible. At least it was for myself, and I know it is for a lot of drummers. Again, I know that there's people out there that are very good at tuning. I've never had the experience of learning from any of them. It's like, I think that no matter what, to do it right, you got to take time. And so it's one of those things where I definitely believe it's possible. It's just for the average drummer who's average working drummer who doesn't have that tech there, we just don't have the hour to spend. And not only that, but I really noticed the tuning to the room, where like I get my drums sounding perfect at home, and then they'd sound completely different in a different room. So yeah. again, it's one of those things. I don't think it's impossible, but we've made it a heck of a lot easier. I can definitely say that.
Yeah, that's where you kind of envy guitar players, because the guitars, I mean, they may have a little bit of fluctuation per room, but I think they probably are a little bit more standard than, or maybe less affected by room and by moisture. But I'm sure there's some level of that, but it just doesn't cross my mind as something that would be affected that as quickly as a drum head is.
Yeah, well, and I think, as far as guitars and such, it probably follows the same principles where, I'm not sure about the size of the room difference, but certainly the climate stuff, if your instrument gets cold and then warms back up, that's going to kind of change things. But again, I mean, guitars tune between every song anyway.
True.
So they're able to bring it back to where it needs to be whenever they want to. We don't have that luxury, and I'd love to see the science behind the drum contracting and expanding, because it's amazing how big of a difference that can make. And then when you've got 20 different points of adjustment, it's so hard to figure out which one of these lugs is causing all of my problems, because it usually comes down to one of them is just not working with the rest of them.
Exactly. And just, the way the drums are always shifting depending on their environment, and you're adding the tension of the tension rods, which one's forced and which one's more naturally fit. And I mean, there's no way to really know any of this stuff with, maybe the drum dial or something like that would help. But this may be like, where you have them all attached to the same thing, and that the natural physics of this system will gravitate toward equal pull at every point without human interaction. That takes out a whole level of complexity or manual labor that, just let nature take its course.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, a drum is so simple in a way. We've made it so complicated to tune. But it's two heads and a shell. It's pretty amazing. And I have to say, ever since I received the final prototype for this, I have it on the kit that I brought to NAMM is sitting at my house, and I get to play it every day. I'm very lucky for that.
Lucky you indeed.
And my other drum sets are like the misfit toys now, because I don't want to tune them anymore. I've got a couple of really nice kits, but they're just kind of sitting lonely in the corner now, because I really have no urge to try to tune those kits anymore.
Because Sugarfoot did not touch them.
That's true. There's some magic in this one now.
There is history now in that drum kit.
There certainly is. Yeah.
Cool. Well, how long was this? I don't remember if you said for sure. When did this become an idea, and how long has it been in development?
So I first had the idea about 3 years ago. I was actually I had a little drum school. I was trying to play drums full time, kind of trying to get away from the blacksmith work. It was pretty hard on the body. So I had this little drum school, and I was playing a lot of gigs and stuff, and kind of have the light bulb moment. It's like, I wonder, there's got to be a better way. I wonder if this will work. And so that was about 3 years ago. And, I didn't really have any background in taking idea to a product before. I guess I did in a way, being a blacksmith, I kind of understood a process, but, I didn't swing a hammer to create these pieces. So it was a little different. So, I started building my team. I had this, I thought it was a great idea, and I mocked it up. I went to Home Depot and kind of hacked something together just to see if the concept worked, and it did. And so I was like, okay, I think I've got something here. Had a couple of good friends that are engineers, so I brought it to them, and one of them, or they both thought it was great, but one of them was willing to actually help me with it, which was and then a friend of a friend was a attorney, actually, and a musician, so he understood the benefit, and he hopped on board. So I've just built this small team, and over the last 3 years, we went through the patent process. We have a utility patent on it. Now we have other patents pending as well. And with the engineer, he was able to do the CAD drawings. I did my best to give him a little 2D drawing of what I was looking for. But then he did all the work to, make this into a manufacturable product. And it's one of these things where I look back and it's like, wow, it's taken a while to get to this point, but there's been so many steps and so many, different versions, little things that we needed to tweak, and 3D prints and prototypes and such. And, now to just have a finished product, or at least the finished prototype on that kit that we brought to NAMM, was pretty amazing. So over these last 3 years, we've been working on it, and we hope to be in market within the next year.
Very cool. Yeah, I definitely be in line for one of those, especially if I get back to playing live. I mean, right now it might be a little bit, might be a little bit jumping the gun just because it's just in my basement. I don't get to use it much.
Sure.
But I think, when you start to change rooms more often, and it's, becomes a little bit more of a performance thing, and I'm like, hey, I would love to have that. It just seems like such a improvement over, having those drab toms all the time. And now, you had one for snare too, right?
Yeah, I have it on the snare too. Now that was the biggest experiment, actually. I figured the system would work well on the kick drum and the tom toms, but I know a lot of drummers like to, like really crank up the bottom head compared to the top head, or I know a lot of drummers will detune a couple of the lugs and get this kind of, I don't know how you would describe that sound, but anyway, I know that snare is a little bit more customized, but I thought, why not? I gotta at least try it, right? I gotta see how it does on a snare. And I was amazed at NAMM how many people were just complimenting the snare sound. It really works great. It kind of goes a little bit against what I've normally done with my own snare drums, because I've been one of those guys where I heard somebody else say, yeah, crank up the bottom head. So I started doing that. I didn't really have any other reasons other than that. I was just wanting my snare drum to sound good. And I'd have to say that's probably true with all of my drums. I used to tune the bottom head a little higher than the top, just because I felt like it was a little easier to tune. But at the end of the day, all I wanted was my drums to sound good. I didn't really care how I got there, as long as they sounded good. But the snare was a pleasant surprise to me, because what this allows you to do is it's like carrying 10 different snares with you. You can just totally detune it and just be at this, kind of fat, wet sound one song, and then crank it up, as tight as you want, and have this really tight, funky sound the next song. And I was really surprised by how many people just gravitated toward the snare, because that was the biggest experiment. So that was pretty neat. And I have to say, the snare is definitely one that I've fought with. I fight with the tom toms on the old system, but the snare drum too was the one that I'd always have a bunch of tape or a bunch of stuff all over the drum heads to make it sound good.
Yeah.
I'd have some kind of weird ringing and stuff. And actually, I was talking to a couple of the guys at the Remo booth, the Remo drum heads at the NAMM show. And we were talking about that, all the stuff put on the drum head, and how it kind of kills the sound. While it might sound okay to the drummer, it's taking out all the tones that really travel, and what the audience hears and stuff. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because I don't know much about the science of the heads,
Yeah.
And then one of them said, he put it pretty clearly. He's like, if you're meant to put a bunch of tape all over the drum heads, we'd sell them that way. I was like, that's a really good point.
Yes, it is.
So again, now I really, unless I want to heavily muffle it, I don't put anything on any of the drums now. And I definitely noticed that difference. Not having all that stuff constricting the sound. It really, they really just boom. It's really pretty fun to experience for yourself. Yeah.
That's great to hear. I mean, I've never been a fan of the gels. I usually have tried to avoid like the top head rings. It's usually the only thing I use for like the snare, but my usual answer for the snare was to just tighten the snares. I mean, I don't know if anyone ever shared with me that, oh, you should probably tighten the bottom head. I always just tighten the snares because then I would hug the head more. But yeah, I've always been a huge fan of more of a crisp, not quite a marching snare, but I still prefer a really sharp attack on my snare. And when it starts to get some of that buzz without the ring and without the plastic ring on the head, not the actual sounding ring, but it just kind of started to annoy me a little bit. And knowing that this could, kind of naturalize the sound of a snare is really appealing.
Yeah. Again, it was a pleasant surprise. Again, I expected it to work on all the other drums, but for it to work this well on the snare, and so many people commented on it. They're just like, I was across the hall, I could hear that snare drum. It's like, that sounds great. And I really attribute it to that. Not having a bunch of stuff on the snare drum, I think that makes a huge difference. Aside from the even tuning, both heads being in tune with each other, I think just being able to free that snare up really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I would agree. And yeah, I wish I had tried the snare. We only tried the one you had out front at the booth. We didn't get behind the kit at all, but I kind of regret not trying the snare now, because that sounds like it was a popular one.
Yeah, well, we plan on being at the next Winter NAMM. I think we're still deciding if we're going to be at Summer NAMM or not, but we'll definitely be at the next Winter one. So you'll have another chance to check that out, and then obviously once we're to market with it, we'll get you into a full setup.
That's right. I'm all for it. Let's go. So yeah, what was the website that listeners could check out to see more of the product?
Sure. It's welchtuningsystems.com. And we have a lot of videos up there. You can also look us up on YouTube for Welch Tuning Systems. We've got Instagram and Facebook, the usual social media outlets. You can just search Welch Tuning Systems. But yeah, that website will really have everything you want. It's got some history about it. There's a frequently asked questions page, and then we've got a bunch of videos demonstrating like how easy it is to change the heads. That was one question a lot of people had at the show, and we put a video up to show you how easy that is. It's just like, it's kind of a mix between changing a guitar string and lacing up your shoe. And so again, it really alleviates some pain in that side of things as well. So definitely encourage you to come and check out the videos. And if you have any questions that aren't answered on the frequently asked questions page, then feel free to reach out to us too. We're here to answer anything we can for you, and just kind of help educate people of what we have here, and keep moving forward with this and try to spread the word. We're a brand new company. So, if you think it's cool, share it with your friends, help us get the word out there. Because, we made this for drummers. So if there's a drummer in your life you think could benefit from this, please share it with them.
He will love it. I promise. From a drummer to other drummers, they will love it. Well, very cool. I'll post a link to your website and some of your social media channels in the show notes after this is published. And I appreciate you joining me today. This has been great. Your product is awesome, and I look forward to you guys getting to market here whenever that may be. I know we don't know yet. Thank you for listening to Behind the Backline, brought to you by Octave Media. You can find Octave Media at octave.media. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in iTunes to learn more about great products, and leave a review to let us know what you thought of this episode. We encourage you to share us with your friends and colleagues via social media, and we'll see you next time. Take care.